Hello there, welcome back to a weekly vlog from Cloud with Chris. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you folks for joining on this Sunday evening. I am going to do a few updates tonight. We're going to be playing no games today. That will be next week, so this is the first since we've introduced this kind of every other week, switching between doing just updates, switching between doing the kind of live stream with the gaming, etc. So as I say, just updates today, but we will be doing something slightly different here. We will also be looking at something new. We'll be looking at GitHub Copilot, I should say, as well today. So you know the deal. If you like what you hear today, please go ahead, like the content, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're watching. Please support the channel because I've been doing a bit of planning today for kind of the next phase of the channel's growth, where I want to take it, some of the things I want to be working on, and I'm kind of cementing all of that in my mind. And my next step really is to go ahead and look through all of the content, what's done well, what hasn't done as well, and figure out how to kind of course correct and make sure I'm doing more of what everyone wants. So with that, let's just dive right in here and do our usual thing with the updates. And let me just bring the display up here. There we go. So we're going to start off today with the Cloud with Chris updates, just because we're going to be talking about GitHub Copilot. So it makes sense to, rather than switch out from Cloud with Chris, to stick with GitHub and then do Copilot at the end. I was going to say code spaces. I'm so used to talking about code spaces. So what's gone on with Cloud with Chris this week? It has once again been a busy week. Starting off a week ago, we of course had the session where I was joined by folks from the communities. So Mert, Dean, James joined me as we went ahead, sailed the seas, and I talked a little bit about cloud along the way. We did have a good little chat afterwards in terms of things to tweak, things to maybe think about for the next time doing that. So I know we could have talked a lot more about cloud while we were playing games as well. So we've got some ideas how we can make it a bit more conversational as well. So again, I did mention that was the first session of that. So inevitably we'll be learning from that one as we go. But hopefully we enjoyed it just as much as we enjoyed playing it. Then on Monday, I released a blog post all about using API management policies to enforce access restriction policies. So using things like JWT tokens to validate whether someone is authorized to call a specific API endpoint. Got to give a shout out to a good friend, Yella Droits, for his peer review on that as well. Made some tweaks after the fact, which I think really enhanced the blog as well there. So a big thank you, Yella. And as you can see, there's a very, very detailed blog post all about how you can go and use API management policies for identity and access restrictions effectively. There will be a follow-on. It won't be this week. I've taken an easy route this week and a lighter blog post introducing CNCF, but we will have more of that series coming along, so stay tuned for that one. Now if we jump back to the homepage, on Wednesday, then I did an episode, I should say, with Annie Talvasto. Brilliant session. Annie is the mastermind behind that one. She brought the content of top new CNCF projects to look out for. Of course, introducing what the CNCF is and introducing a few of her favorite projects. And it was a brilliant session. I learned a lot in it because there were a lot of projects that I don't know about in the CNCF, and we got to talk through some of them. So really great session. That is actually, as I say, going to be the blog post coming out tomorrow, introducing CNCF and giving a little bit of a flavour around what it is and how maybe you can start your own journey with the CNCF as well. So for anyone who doesn't know, as I'm talking here, the CNCF, Cloud Native Compute Foundation, they're the folks that bring you projects such as Kubernetes and Prometheus and 93 others, because there's 95 projects overall in the CNCF at this moment in time. So again, encourage you to go and take a look at that session because it was a good fun one as well. And then on Friday, we had the familiar face of Murtietta joining us, talking about DevOps on Azure. So we really focused on the container side of things. We started off on the DevOps Starter project, then talked about things like Azure Container Instances, Azure Kubernetes Service, Web App for Containers, container registries, those types of things. But the part that I really enjoyed about that session is Mert is also a traffic ambassador as well. And he talks a lot about traffic labs, and traffic proxy in particular. And that's what we talked about in the session is traffic proxy, another ingress that you could use inside of Kubernetes. And I was blown away actually by how powerful it is, the kind of pluggable interfaces that you have, the pluggable middleware pipeline is probably a better way of saying it, in terms of the ingress. You can do things like retries, circuit breakers, you can rewrite headers, for example, and I was just really impressed by it. Also the monitoring story around it, how it hooks into some of the different components, etc. And then also how it hooks into other traffic products as well. So thank you, Mert. It was a brilliant session and really enjoyed it. So hopefully we'll get you on again and talk about something else. We'll figure out what that is. So then this week, we have a variety coming up, actually. So obviously you're listening to the 27th weekly vlog right now. So welcome. On Monday, so tomorrow, this week I actually have the week off and I am going to be relaxing. I am going to be doing no recording this week. I am doing maybe a little bit of blog writing to get ahead of the game, but going to be relaxing on vacation this week. So tomorrow there'll be a blog post coming out about CNCF and introducing that. As I say, a fairly light one because I'm kind of already in vacation mood, which is maybe why this one's a little bit more relaxed as well. Then on Tuesday, you are in for a treat on Tuesday. Honestly, I am so excited for that session to come out. Why a diverse team is crucial to startup success. This is a session with Melissa Yurkois, I should say. And Melissa is a CEO of a startup, and the passion area she has is around diversity and what she calls dimensions of diversity. And it was a really, really interesting discussion. Honestly, it made me think a lot, that session. And part of what I mentioned about planning for the future of the channel and thinking about where I want to take things, I've also been thinking about the diversity angle and some of the things that really Melissa's talk left me with, actually. So I really encourage you to listen to that one or watch that one. It was a really great session, just talking about, a lot of people think about women versus men, thinking about kind of, inclusive of black people, for example, versus white. But there's many dimensions of diversity. Thinking about, of course, diversity of thought, but thinking about disabilities, for example, thinking about neurodiversity, thinking about things like not even gender, but for example, sexual orientation, ethnicity. There's so many angles that you can think about diversity from. And really, if you're not thinking about all of those angles, all of those dimensions, you're potentially leaving something on the table and missing out. And it's I think there's obviously a lot of focus on it in the world these days. I'm not sure enough people still get it. And I think this is a really great discussion. Would be biased, but it's something really important to me. So please do go ahead and listen to that one. Then on Wednesday, we've got another Cloud Gaming Notes session with Lee Williams. This time we talk about esports and live streaming. And this one, again, was a very good one. Really enjoyed it. It's really interesting talking with Lee. Both of us always come off these recordings and just talk about how much we enjoyed actually just the open discussion, because there are things in our brains and in our minds that we don't really kind of pull out to the forefront, that we kind of inherently know until we talk about them. So again, it was one of those there, and we talk about things like the community side again. Of course, that has come into things. We talk about things like networking bandwidth. We talk about things like content delivery networks and how architectures such as that, game streaming, for example, and media services and the CDNs of the world enable this kind of live streaming. And we talk about, where we could see that going from an esports perspective. And I'll leave you to listen into that one, because I really enjoyed some of that thought process there and what's to come. And then on Friday, we've got another session here, how to choose the right data store for your scenario. So we've got another of the Architecting for the Cloud series, one pattern at a time. And we've got a good familiar face back, Steph Martin. So again, it was great to chat with Steph. Really enjoyed that session. And again, learned a lot there as well. I've used many different data services in my various projects that I've kind of supported, in the ones I've built myself, for example. And I learned that there's actually a type called a search database, when it makes sense because you've got things like Azure Search, but I've used Azure Search. I never thought of it as a type of database though. So there you go. There's things you can certainly learn in that episode. So definitely go and check that out. And that's about it for this week. So I say that's about it. That's actually quite a lot going on, isn't it? So there we go. So with that, let's just go ahead and take a look at talks. I don't think there's any talks coming up this week. We just have .NET Knots at the end of the month. And we had Lati Bar, of course, last week as well. So the folks at Lati were very, very welcoming. Really enjoyed talking with you folks. So thank you very much for having me. And I need to update my website to make sure that you are updated there as well. And with that, let's just jump across then to the Azure blog. So there were a couple of updates this week. I say a couple, there were 4. The first one is about bringing cloud experiences to data workloads anywhere with Azure SQL enabled by Azure Arc. And I believe in that one, they announced the general availability, if I remember rightly. Yes, the general availability of Azure Arc. And then, they give a few updates as well on some of the breakthroughs they're having with some of their partners, etc. And then there was a session on, it would have been the 29th of June. 29th of June? Yes, 29th of June. I'm getting all lost with my dates here. Where they did an update on Azure Hybrid and a multi-cloud digital event there. So that was one aspect. There were several billing and management updates. As a bit of a summary there. Cloud-in, of course, we say goodbye to Cloud-in and welcome many new features as part of the Azure cost management and analysis functionality there as well. And there's a bit of a roundup then of the features that are available there. So amortized costs in preview, cost management labs, new ways to save money, and documentation updates then as well. Then what else do we have? We have advancing safe deployments with Aiops. I love this series that Mark Rusinovich is writing up with additional folks from his team. And this one, they talk about Gandalf, a system which they've deployed to help effectively with something they call Aiops and using artificial intelligence to help with operating these solutions there. And what it does is it takes a load of signals, a load of data, goes ahead and then runs the kind of AI, the machine learning models over that data so they can effectively decide what they need to go and do. And then that goes ahead into a series of consumers like reports, for example, to visualize that, a diagnosis UI so they can figure out, for example, what there potentially might be a root cause or something or other there, and eventually take action on that then. So it's not just about the human having to go ahead, look at the signals and take action, but actually using the artificial intelligence to help them reason over that, get some kind of decision out of that, a go, no go, and then orchestrating some kind of result then. Really fascinating. Again, I always love these engineering type of blog posts here. So if you're interested in that side of things like I am, take a look at that one. And then finally, there was an announcement from the folks in the Azure Spring Cloud side of things. If you use New Relic 1, then you will be pleased to know that there is now some integration in place with New Relic 1 and Azure Spring Cloud. And it's nice and easy to go ahead and instrument your Spring Boot applications using a new relic key, as you can see in the in the video if you're reading that, in the blog post, of course. And then you can go and nicely integrate things in there. So again, great to see that wider ecosystem and the integrations happening there. Really, really awesome. Now, next up then, let's jump across to the Azure blogs. So first off then, I'm going to take a drink first. Okay, so first off then, introducing the ingestion clients for Azure Speech, which I think is great, having the ability to be able to have a client to go and interact with that service, which is really an API. So great to see that's there for those folks who maybe don't want to interact with the API and just need access to interact with the service itself. Expansion of the public preview of on-demand disk bursting for premium SSDs to more regions. Public preview of Azure Auto Manage now supports Azure Arc enabled servers. That is an excellent update. I'm big on all things Azure Arc. Limited preview new Azure VMs for confidential workloads. VPN NAT is now in public preview, so Azure VPN Gateway Network Address Translation can be used to connect on-premises networks or branch offices to an Azure virtual network with overlapping IP addresses. That is a big deal. Azure Image Builder service is now generally available. Azure Maps Android SDK is now generally available. Soft deletes for blobs capability for Azure Data Lake Storage is now limited in public preview. What else do we have? General availability. Skip X509 certificate proof of possession for IoT Hub and DPS. So to make it easier to get started with X509 authentication with IoT Hub and DPS, they are removing the requirement to prove possession of uploaded certificates. GA, so Azure Security Center updates for June 2021. We'll open that in a new tab. GA of Azure Sphere version 2107 expected on July the 21st, 2021. So that's just a couple of weeks away. And update PowerShell version 7.0 and 7.1 to protect against a vulnerability. So we'll jump into that as well. So first off then, the GA updates for June with Azure Security Center. There's a new alert for Azure Defender for Key Vault. There's recommendations to encrypt with custom and managed keys disabled by default. Prefix for Kubernetes alerts changed from AKS to Kates. And deprecated 2 recommendations from Apply System Update Security Control. Next up then, the PowerShell version updates that we mentioned there. So update PowerShell version 7.0 and 7.1 to protect against a vulnerability. They've released new versions of PowerShell to address a .NET Core remote code execution vulnerability. Windows PowerShell 5.1 is not affected by this issue. So if you're on 7.0, update to 7.0.6. If you're on 7.1, update to 7.1.3. Next up then, we have the Azure DevOps blog. And again, not a big update this week, just 2. So the first one is another Azure Fun Bites episode, this time using observability, etc. in Azure with Datadog, with a guest Ryan McLean, who I believe is a tech evangelist, I believe in Datadog, if I remember rightly from reading that one. Yep, indeed, exactly that. And then top stories from the community. Excuse me, and I've just realised, if you were listening to the live stream, I think I had the mic muted for about the last 5 minutes or so apologies for that. I will go ahead and upload the recording that I've got going simultaneously. So as I was just saying there, we'll go ahead and take a look at the frequently asked questions before we jump into Copilot. So Copilot, we talked about what it is, how it works. No, it's not going to write perfect code. It's going to suggest things for you. It may not always work, but it's there to help. Ultimately, if we just go ahead and read some of these FAQs, it has been trained on publicly available sources, including code in public repositories on GitHub. So what does that mean? It means if there's public code on GitHub, you might see similar examples being fed back to you, for example. So we'll maybe see that as we go through here. Why was it trained on public data sources? You can see here the models gain insight and accuracy from public collective intelligence. This is a new space. They're keen to engage in discussion with developers and lead the industry in setting appropriate standards. So again, they acknowledge, yes, maybe they need to kind of tweak how they do this. They're not sure yet. This is why it's in that technical preview stage. So they want to go ahead and engage with folks in the community here. What else have we got here? Protecting originality. Does GitHub Copilot recite code from the training set? Code synthesizer, not a search engine. Vast majority of code that is suggested is uniquely generated, has never been seen before. About 0.1% of the time, the suggestion may contain snippets and verbatim from the training set. So, as it says, there can be scenarios where that will come out there. Who owns the code? This is a really important one. I've seen a lot of discussion about this on Twitter. GitHub Copilot is a tool like a compiler or a pen. The suggestion GitHub Copilot generates and the code you write with its help belongs to you, and you are responsible for it. We recommend that you carefully test, review, and vet the code as you would with any code you write yourself. So I've heard a lot of discussions about, who owns the code, what is the licensing model. It is your code. It clearly says that right there. Do I need to credit GitHub Copilot for helping me write code? No, the code you create with GitHub Copilot's help belongs to you. While every friendly robot likes the occasional word of thanks, you're in no way obligated to credit GitHub Copilot. Just like with the compiler, the output of your use of GitHub Copilot belongs to you. And does GitHub Copilot ever output personal data? Because GitHub Copilot was trained on publicly available code, its training set included public personal data included in that code, aka if you do the bad practice of putting passwords and connection strings and things like that into your code, there's a small potential by the sounds of it. So let me continue. From our internal testing, we found it to be extremely rare that GitHub Copilot suggestions included personal data verbatim from the training set. In some cases, the model will suggest what appears to be personal data, email addresses, phone numbers, access keys, etc., but is actually made up of information synthesized from patterns in training data. For the technical preview, we have implemented a rudimentary filter that blocks emails when shown in standard formats, but it is still possible to get the model to suggest this sort of content if you try hard enough. So what am I saying? If it's in a public data source somewhere, you've gone ahead, you've committed a connection string, an email address, a phone number, there is the potential you could see it come up as a suggestion in GitHub Copilot, so bear that in mind. Again, it's only as good as the public code that is out there. So if there's insecure code, if there's bad practice code, there is the potential it could go ahead and use that from the training set. So bear in mind how machine learning works, right? It's basing it off of its model, etc. You get the idea there. So, how is the data that GitHub Copilot collects used? In order to generate suggestions, GitHub Copilot transmits part of the file you're editing to the service. This context is used to synthesize suggestions for you. GitHub Copilot also records whether suggestions are accepted or rejected. This telemetry is used to improve future versions of the AI system so that Copilot can make better suggestions for all users in the future, aka supervised learning. Go ahead and check that out. Is the transmitted data secure? All data is transmitted and stored securely. Access to the telemetry is strictly limited to individuals on a need-to-know basis. Inspection of the gathered source code will be predominantly automatic. When humans read it, it's specifically with the aim of improving the model or detecting abuse. Will my private code be shared with other users? No, we use telemetry data, including information about which suggestions user accept or reject to improve the model. And again, why is the technical preview restricted, not available to everyone? Requires state-of-the-art AI hardware. During the technical preview, we are offering GitHub Copilot to a limited number of testers for free. When we launch a commercial product, we'll be making it available as broadly as possible. Will there be a paid version? Our plan is to build a commercial version of GitHub Copilot in the future. We want to use a preview to learn how people use GitHub Copilot and what it takes to operate it at scale. And then finally, can you use it from another IDE? Not yet, only VS Code at the moment. So that's the FAQs out the way, because I'm convinced there would be a number of questions that relate to some of that stuff. So I wanted to make sure we did the FAQs first. So let's go ahead. Let's open a new file. And I'm going to go to my old stomping ground of Ruby. And we're just going to go ahead and zoom in a bit here. And, oops, there we go. So first off, let's just go ahead and print something here. So you can see nothing's really happening there at the moment. But if I say, right, print hello world 10 times, for example. I've got Copilot turned off. that is why. So let me go and turn it on globally. Start that again. So we should start seeing things happen, potentially. So you can see it echoed hello world, and it got that comment there. So now let me go. It's been so long since I've written Ruby that I am so rusty. I'm showing how bad I am here. Let's go ahead and just do some kind of example here. I'm just going to get something up on the other page just to see how far we can push it. You know, I'm not really gonna so you can see no code actions available so far. We've just gone ahead and printed hello world. Let me then go ahead and do something like retrieve tweets from Twitter API. So notice what's going on here. Require Ruby gems. Yes. Require Twitter. Yes. Create Twitter API object. And notice how I can pretty much just new line and tabbing that code. So I've just got a very rudimentary, very basic application that's going ahead and getting a set of tweets on Twitter. And now what I'm doing is just printing those out. Now you can see this is where there are some interesting scenarios, right? Like it's now going ahead and repeating this because it thinks that it should go and do that again. If I keep doing that, you'll see that there, as you can see. So, you know, there's some nuances like that to think about. Let's go ahead and say, I don't know, let's see what happens if we do this. Acquire JSON. So we're getting a new version of that. I'm just trying to do something else here. 1 second. It might be because I haven't saved the file yet. Let me just go and do that. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's do something else here. So yeah. So what I did there is I pressed the buttons Control and Enter. And what you can see happening here on the right hand side is it's giving me a number of different example solutions here that I could go and use. So you could see that I was kind of going new line tab, new line tab, new line tab. And that works in a lot of languages. Like when I mentioned about the blog writing earlier, that was happening for me in Markdown. So there is a paragraph that I deliberately kept in this blog post. Here we go. This paragraph here actually came from GitHub Copilot. So I just did a new line. And if I do the Control Enter again there, you can see that there's different things coming up. So for example, it's come up with some of the interesting solutions there, actually. There we go. What is cloud native compute? And notice that this is all somewhat in the context of how I do things as well. Like it's picked up my cloud with Chris logo.png. There's things like that that it's trying to reason and suggest as examples that it thinks will make sense based on what it knows of the code here. So again, look at this. Look at all these examples. These are going to be taken from public repositories where people have written similar things, reasoning over that and making its own paragraph, its own example there. Now, yes, it's not the best English, and sometimes this is a new project that's been created by NCF, which is a new organization that's been created by the Linux Foundation. You know, there's certain things there that you know could go better there, for example. But you get the idea. There's some very interesting scenarios that you could potentially unlock here and help you with building your code and writing your code, being more productive. So jumping back to Ruby here, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these solutions here. So requiring Ruby gems using the AdWords API. So I guess that's the Google Text Analytics API. PP, I'm not sure what PP is from a Ruby gem perspective. Then we're just initializing a service, constructing text as an example. So that's our corpus of data. And then analyzing the sentiment there, going ahead. That's good. There's an API key removed there. You can see we've got a different version AdWords API there. Very similar one there as well. Similar kind of scenario there. But I did see an example a bit earlier. Here we go. They used the Bing Text Analytics API, which I thought was kind of interesting. So let's take a look at this. So Bing Text Analytics, the way they're requiring that is a framework or a Ruby gem that is kind of in the same repository structure. So that's something, for example, that wouldn't quite work out of the bat. That's something that would require some refactoring. But check this out, right? Like you're able to go ahead, create a new client based upon the API key, going ahead, analyzing the sentiment. The rooms were wonderful and the staff was helpful. That's our corpus of data. And then, this is what the sentiment is. This is what the entities are coming back. And then that's what's outputted to the console, the command line. This is an example of Azure Text Analytics here now. Printing a result here, that is just a function that they've got in their program there. They're requiring the Ruby gem Azure Text Analytics this time. But here, you can see slightly differently how they create the client, pass in the API key, get the sentiments and print the results. So, that looks like a promising scenario right there. You can go and get entities by type. This is a slightly different example again here, using the AdWords API. And even IBM Watson. Here we go, Watson Developer Cloud. Like, this is just really interesting to go and explore here. And as I say, I didn't test this scenario out earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one in. And this is where we could go ahead then and add something else in. So maybe, I don't know, let's do some image recognition now. And let's see, we've done Control Enter again. Let's see what happens this time. So a lot of it still looks like text analytics, I guess. Again, using the majority of what it sees in the document and using that as a basis there. But in fact, actually, here we go. There is a computer vision example right here, just a bit further down. So set up the input image, replace it with your own, use the API key. So that one, again, looks pretty good. So you know what? I'm going to go and accept that solution. And here we go. You can see now we've got two different APIs that we're calling. And in a matter of seconds, just being able to go ahead, not look at any docs, just go ahead, be productive super quickly, and get some example code out there. Now, I'm not saying that's, the world's most production-ready code, and we're going to go and deploy that straight into production. But for those times where you're just trying to get an idea behind things, going ahead, trying to get an understanding of stuff, really awesome for that. Let's go ahead and do something different here. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this one. Oops, or trying to save this one. There we go. So let's do something in Python this time. So again, my Python knowledge is like next to zero. So something I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a single line and again, see where we can go with this here. So let's see. Let me see. You know what? Let's just try something else. Create an Azure function to trigger a task. There we go. So let's Control Enter. Wow. Okay, so number one thing we've found here. I hope whoever you are, you have rotated your storage account keys because you've committed something in public here. But let's see. You can see there's some example tasks. And again, this one is just a load of comments here. Here's one triggering a task to run a script on Azure every minute. So actually, the first one probably looked like what we were trying to do there. Maybe even the second one here. We're just binding to a queue service, but let's accept that one. We're going to go ahead. We're going to remove that for now. And that's the type of thing we could go and do. You pop the message from the queue, go and get the queue from Azure Storage. Yes, there are probably some dependencies that I would need. However, I do that in Python. As I say, I'm not a Python dev myself. But let's see, initialize or set up a durable function. Again, there's plenty of examples here. Create regex for an email address. Awesome. So here we go. Email regex. Done. It's regex for YAML Markdown. Look at that. You can recognize what you need there. Create regex to recognize trying to come up with something a little more adventurous. A property and value in YAML. Let's see, property regex. Okay. Do you do a colon? Yes, you do. So there we go. That's to recognize a property. It doesn't do property and value. But in fairness, I'll take that. Create regex to recognize a value in YAML. I didn't even need to go and search that time. That is pretty impressive. The amount of time it took me to write regex for one of my own pet projects was very frustrating. So something like this is just really, really awesome. I don't know. Calculate the distance between 2 points, sure. Let's see what comes back here. It's just synthesizing the solution. Awesome. There we go. It's got 2 points on a graph. It's just doing the square root of our differences and of the squares, I should say, and adding those up. Impressive. Okay. Calculate the terminal velocity of a ball falling from a height. Going down the physics route here, folks. Okay, so we've got a few different options here. Someone's obviously got gravity as a variable there. Someone else has just put gravity as 9.81, which, yes, 9.81 meters per second squared, if I remember rightly, is the acceleration rate. So they've gone ahead and done that one. Interesting. Let's see if anyone is listening in the chat. feel free to give some examples here. And hey, Simon, I've just spotted your chat there. Good evening. So let's think, what else could we have? Calculate a random password. Your random password. That's effectively our corpus of allowed characters. Interesting. Go ahead and accept that one. I quite like that one. What else have we got? Create a game. Look, let's create a game of chess. See what we get here. We've got a load of comments. Here we go. Create a game of chess using Python. So I'm just really curious, if I accept that first one, do I just get the comments or do I get everything else that would have been in there? I just get the comments. Okay. Okay, a game of tic-tac-toe. Maybe that's a bit more realistic. So again, we got a load of comments, Well, I suspect if it's intelligent enough, it's going to try and pick the same corpus. So it's just picked up a load of comments saying not quite what we want to do. This is fun. So obviously this is some kind of course, given that they're grading things here. Interesting. Let's see, what else can we do? Let's see. Python's quite a low language, isn't it? So let's see if we can communicate with IoT Hub. Interesting. So we get the needed instantiations here and imports. There's an example using service bus. Let me do something else. Send a message to Azure IoT Hub. Let's do that and see what we get back. Interesting. So I guess what we're seeing here, folks, is there is some potential here. What we've looked at with the Markdown example, the Ruby example, the Python examples, looking at things like the regex, creating that and creating some longer form code. It could certainly help make you productive and get you a bit further on and help you along the way. I think the longer the code, certainly you'll need to look over it and understand what it's actually giving you, what it's actually doing there, as you've seen from the examples. But what I loved with this one, for example, is I went ahead earlier and was going ahead and entering my tags. So if I just turn that one on, just like this, Kubernetes, open source, Kubernetes, CNCF. So again, it'll start repeating itself after a while where it gets a bit confused, but you can see where you can kind of add those individual lines. It's very, very interesting and clever how it's doing that. Going back and trying to synthesize solutions here. So I think you can do it. I think I was pressing the wrong combination a bit earlier on. There we go. So sorry, and sometimes it gets a little confused and isn't necessarily, the greatest of examples. But remember, Markdown is not one of those prime examples that they're wanting to showcase yet. Ruby, Python, etc. But it's still doing some great stuff in there. Like, look at this paragraph and this paragraph. Really, really fascinating. That's why I've included that line in the blog post going out tomorrow. So, yeah, I need to have a little more of a play with GitHub Copilot. But I am impressed with what it can do, with the regex that I mentioned a bit earlier, with just some of those examples of calling various Azure APIs. It's just fascinating to see where they're going to be taking this. So I'd love to hear what you all think. Where do you think something like this is going to go? What excites you about this? Let me know. So with that, let's go ahead and start wrapping up here. So there we go, folks. A session all about Azure updates, Azure blog updates, or Azure updates. You know what I mean. Cloud with Chris updates, Azure DevOps updates, GitHub updates, and looking a little bit at GitHub Copilot. I'll probably do a separate cloud drop on GitHub Copilot at some point as well and get something out there for everyone to go and take a look at. But you can see there's certainly quite a bit of power with that. And I'm just really intrigued to see where they take it. So you know the deal. If you like this content, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If there's other content on the channel you've liked before and you haven't quite gone ahead, liked it, subscribed, etc., please do go back and do so. Right now, I'm in the middle of planning how I take Cloud with Chris forwards, some of the main kind of objectives I have with it, and how I really make sure that I know I'm being successful in what I'm doing there. So, community is a big focus, diversity is a big focus, and the quality of what I'm giving you all with the content is a big focus. So those are my focus areas. So any feedback, any input is always helpful. And of course, available on many platforms: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and cloudwithchris.com, where there's not just the video and the audio files, there is, of course, the blog posts as well. So with that, folks, you won't hear much of me this week. I will be releasing episodes, but I'll probably be a little quieter this week on social media, etc. I'm going to be doing a bit of traveling and taking a bit of time off. So thank you so much for all the support. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until next week's vlog, where we will actually be live and doing game streaming again. Bye for now.